My grandson did not shout it. He did not cry. He did not even look at his mother when he said it. He just slipped beside me during Thanksgiving dinner, while everyone else was laughing over turkey and sweet potatoes, and whispered so quietly I almost thought the room had imagined it for me.
"Grandpa, Mom told the lawyer to change your name on the house."
For a second, I kept my hand on the back of the dining chair and did not move. My daughter-in-law was at the other end of the table, wearing a cream sweater, gold earrings, and the soft little smile she always saved for guests. My son was carving the turkey with his head down. The relatives were passing plates like nothing in that house had ever been cold or cruel or hidden behind a garage door for 3 winters. I looked at my grandson first, not at her, not at my son, at him. Because children do not understand deeds, titles, signatures, or fraud, but they understand fear. And my grandson was terrified. His small hand was gripping the sleeve of my flannel shirt so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. Behind him, my daughter-in-law laughed at something her sister said, then glanced toward me just long enough to make sure I was still standing near the doorway where she had placed me, not sitting with the family. That was where I had been trained to stand, near the edge, near the kitchen, near the garage door. Close enough to serve, far enough to disappear. For 3 years, she had told people I preferred it that way. She told them I liked quiet. She told them the guest room was being renovated, the office was being reorganized, the house was just temporarily crowded. She would tilt her head and say, "It's temporary, until we finish the renovation." And every time she said it, my son would look down, rub the back of his neck, and say nothing. The renovation never started. Not one wall opened. Not one contractor came. Not one can of paint was bought. But my cot stayed in the garage, beside the lawnmower, the snow shovel, and a stack of plastic bins with my name written on masking tape. 3 birthdays passed there. 3 Christmas mornings. 3 winters where the space heater clicked like an old man's teeth before dying in the middle of the night. And I told myself, like fools do when they still love their children, that maybe tomorrow my son would remember I was his father. But on that Thanksgiving night, with my grandson whispering about a lawyer and my name on the house, I finally understood something I should have understood much earlier. The garage was not the punishment. The garage was the setup. I looked across the dining room at my daughter-in-law, still smiling, still perfect, still pretending she had rescued an old man instead of burying him alive inside his own home. Then I looked at my son. He lifted his eyes for half a second and looked away. That hurt more than the cold ever had. I patted my grandson's hand and said, "Go sit down, buddy." He shook his head, but I gave him the gentlest smile I could manage. "It's all right." It was not all right. Nothing about that house was all right. But I had spent 66 years learning that anger is only useful when it can keep its hands steady. I walked past the table, past the candles, past the framed family photos where I had slowly been pushed to the edges, and opened the door to the garage. The cold came in like an animal that recognized me. My cot was still there, folded blanket at the foot, boots underneath, pill bottle on the little wooden crate I used as a nightstand. I shut the door behind me, took my old phone from my pocket, and called my attorney at 11 o'clock at night. When he answered, his voice was rough with sleep. "Frank," he said, "do you know what time it is?" I looked at the cot. I looked at the concrete floor. I looked at the place where I had spent 3 years being taught to accept less than a dog. Then I said,
I think someone is trying to take my house.
The next morning we found out I was wrong. She was not trying. She had already started.
Before I tell you what happened at that Thanksgiving table, you need to understand how a man ends up sleeping in a garage for 3 years without realizing he is being erased. It does not happen in one night. Nobody drags you out by the collar. Nobody says, "You are no longer family." At least, not at first. It happens with small favors that become rules, and small rules that become shame, and shame that becomes a place you are too tired to fight your way out of. My name is Frank Hollis. I was 63 when I first brought my suitcase into my son's house. Back then, I still called it my son's house, even though my money had helped keep it standing more times than anyone liked to remember. I had worked 38 years in machine repair, mostly in factories where the air smelled like oil, hot metal, and burnt coffee. My hands were never pretty hands. They were cracked in winter, scarred around the knuckles, and always carrying some little reminder of work, a cut from sheet metal, a burn from a pipe, black grease under the nails that no brush ever fully removed. But those hands paid bills. Those hands fixed furnaces at midnight. Those hands helped my son, Daniel, get through college when he wanted to quit twice and pretend he did not. Those hands wrote checks when he and his wife, Melissa, found the farmhouse they said would be perfect for raising their little boy. It was not a mansion, just an old rural Midwest place with a wide porch, a stubborn roofline, 2 maple trees out front, and a detached garage that had been connected later by a narrow mudroom. The house needed work, but I liked that about it. Good houses, like good men, do not have to look new to still have years left in them. When Daniel called and asked if I would come stay for a little while, I thought he needed help. That was still my weakness. I thought my son asking meant my son needed me. He said the bills were tight. He said Melissa was stressed. He said the guest room had to be cleared because they were planning renovations. He said my grandson Caleb missed me. That last part was the hook that caught me. Caleb was 7 then, all elbows and questions. The kind of boy who could make a broken radio sound like treasure if you let him take the screws out. I had lost my wife, Ruth, 2 years earlier, and after she was gone, the evenings in my own little rental house had started stretching too long. Daniel knew that. Maybe Melissa knew it too. Maybe they both knew loneliness makes a man easier to move. When I arrived, Melissa hugged me at the door like a daughter in a holiday commercial. She said, "Frank, we're so grateful. This is going to be good for everyone." The house smelled like cinnamon and floor cleaner. Caleb ran into my legs and nearly knocked me over. Daniel took my suitcase and said, "Just until we get the guest room sorted, Dad." I believed him. That is the embarrassing part. I believed my son, because a father wants to believe the boy he raised still keeps his word somewhere inside him. The first night, Melissa said the guest room had boxes in it, and the office was full of renovation samples, so they had set up a cot for me in the garage, just for a few nights. She said it lightly, almost apologetically, as if she were more embarrassed than I was. "It's temporary, until we finish the renovation," she told me. Those exact words. I remember them because she would repeat them for 3 years, and every time she said them, they sounded a little less like an explanation and a little more like a lock turning.
The garage was not terrible at first. That is how these things get you. It was early fall, still warm enough at night, and I told myself I had slept in worse places. There was a cot, a blanket, a little crate for my watch and wallet, and a lamp plugged into an extension cord. My work boots looked natural by the door.
My flannel shirts hung from a metal rack near the lawn tools. I even joked that it smelled better than some factory break rooms I had known. Daniel laughed too hard when I said that. Melissa smiled without showing her teeth. For the first week, I ate at the table. I took Caleb to school when Daniel had early shifts. I fixed the loose handle on the pantry door, replaced a cracked outlet cover, cleaned the gutters, and repaired the old garage opener that had been grinding like gravel. I felt useful. That is another way men like me get trapped. We do not always know the difference between being loved and being useful, especially after our wives are gone and nobody looks at us like we are someone's whole world anymore. Then the small changes started. Melissa began leaving my breakfast on the counter instead of calling me to sit down. She said mornings were chaotic. Then she moved one of my plastic bins from the hallway into the garage because
The renovation dust would be bad for your clothes.
there was no renovation dust. Then she asked if I could use the downstairs half bath instead of the upstairs shower when guests were over, because privacy was becoming an issue. Then the upstairs shower became inconvenient all the time. Then my mail started landing in a little basket on top of the freezer in the garage. Daniel saw it. I know he saw it. A man knows when his son sees something and chooses not to carry the weight of it. The first winter was when temporary started to feel like a sentence. Cold in a garage is not like cold in a bedroom. Bedroom cold sits around you. Garage cold comes up through the concrete and climbs into your bones like it is looking for an old injury to live inside. I bought a space heater with my own money. Melissa said it made her nervous because of fire risk, but she never offered another room. Daniel said, "Dad, just be careful with it." That became his whole way of loving me. Warnings without rescue. Be careful with the heater. Be careful on the steps. Be careful not to upset Melissa. Be careful not to make things harder than they already are. I wanted to ask harder for whom, but Caleb was always nearby, and I had made myself a promise that I would not poison that boy's home with adult bitterness. So I swallowed the questions. I folded my blanket every morning. I kept my boots lined under the cot. I washed my coffee mug in the utility sink. When relatives came by, Melissa would say, "Frank likes having his own space." If I was in the room, she would turn to me with that polished smile and say, "Don't you?" And I would do what humiliated men do when they are trying to save everyone else from seeing it. I would nod. The lie grew around that nod. By the second year, people stopped asking where I slept. They just accepted that I came in from the garage like hired help, appeared when something needed fixing, and disappeared when conversation turned comfortable. My son never told me to leave. That would have been cleaner. Cruelty with a name can be fought. What Daniel gave me was worse. He gave me absence. He let Melissa's decisions stand, then acted tired when I noticed them. Once, after she moved my old photographs into a storage bin because they clashed with the new wall colors, I found a picture of Ruth bent at the corner, her face creased right through the smile she had worn on our 25th anniversary. I carried it into the kitchen and asked Daniel if he had seen where the rest of the frames went. Melissa answered before he could. "Frank, I'm trying to make the house less cluttered. You understand?" I looked at my son. He was rinsing a plate that was already clean. He did not turn around. I said his name once. Daniel. He shut off the faucet slowly, like the sound of water had been protecting him. Then he said, "Dad,
Can we not do this right now?" That was the moment I should have packed. I know that now. But people who say they would have left have usually never been old, widowed, and still in love with the memory of who their child used to be. They have never had a grandson knock on a garage door at 8 at night, holding 2 cookies wrapped in a napkin, whispering,
Grandpa, I saved you the good one.
Caleb was the reason I stayed after pride should have carried me out. He would sneak into the garage with school papers, broken toys, questions about engines, and stories he did not trust the adults to hear. We fixed his bicycle chain on a Saturday morning while Melissa hosted brunch inside. We built a little wooden birdhouse from scrap lumber I found behind the shed. I taught him how to hold a wrench properly, how not to force a screw when the thread was wrong, and how to listen to a machine before deciding what was broken.
Sometimes he would sit on the edge of my cot and look around with a child's blunt sadness.
"Grandpa, aren't you cold out here?" he asked me once. I told him, "A little cold never killed a Hollis man." He did not laugh. He touched the blanket, then looked toward the house door.
Mom says you like it.
I remember that one landing deep. I wanted to tell him that grown-ups lie when comfort costs them something. Instead, I said, "Your mom has a lot on her mind." He looked at me the way children look when they know you are protecting them from the truth, and they hate you a little for thinking they cannot handle it. I changed the subject and showed him how to sand the edge of the birdhouse roof. But after he went inside, I sat on that cot for a long time with Ruth's bent photograph in my hands and wondered when exactly I had started helping Melissa teach my grandson that silence was kindness. The 3rd year was the year I stopped being introduced as Daniel's father. That sounds small, but it was not. At first, Melissa would say, "This is my father-in-law, Frank." Then it became, "Frank stays with us." Then, "Frank helps around the property." One afternoon, when a woman from her church group came by to drop off canned goods for a charity drive, she saw me carrying a toolbox through the mudroom and asked if I was the handyman. Melissa laughed before I could answer.
Something like that,
she said. I waited for Daniel to correct her. He was standing right there holding Caleb's backpack. He heard it. He knew I heard it. Caleb heard it too. My grandson looked up at his father, waiting. Daniel adjusted the backpack strap and said nothing. That night, Caleb came to the garage after dinner. He did not bring cookies. He brought one of his drawings. It showed the house, the maple trees, the garage, and a stick figure with a gray beard standing outside. In the drawing, everyone else was inside the yellow windows. I asked him why he drew me outside. He shrugged and said,
"That's where Mom says your room is." I wanted to hate Melissa in that moment. I wanted to hate my son more. But mostly I felt tired. Tired in a way sleep does not fix. I put the drawing in my Bible beside Ruth's photograph and told Caleb something my own father had told me after I got into a fight at 16. "A man is not measured by the room they put him in," I said. "He's measured by what he protects while he's there." Caleb nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe he understood better than I wanted him to. Because after that, he started watching everything. He watched his mother's face when mail came. He watched his father go quiet when papers were discussed. He watched how Melissa lowered her voice whenever a call involved money, property, or lawyers. I did not know it then,
But my grandson was becoming the witness every adult in that house was too cowardly to be. And by the time Thanksgiving came,
He had already heard enough to know that the garage was not the worst thing they had done to me. It was only the part they thought everyone could see and still ignore. Thanksgiving morning started with the smell of butter, onions, and turkey skin crisping in the oven, which would have been beautiful if I had not woken up with frost along the bottom edge of the garage window. I sat on the cot for a minute before putting my boots on, listening to the house wake up without me. Pipes knocked in the walls. Cabinet doors opened and shut. Melissa's voice floated through the mudroom, bright and sharp at the same time, giving orders the way some people give compliments, wrapped in sugar but meant to cut. I could hear Daniel moving chairs in the dining room. Caleb's footsteps went back and forth above me, quick and nervous. The whole place had the sound of a family preparing to look like a family. That was always Melissa's greatest talent. She could make a table look warm, even when half the people around it were starving for kindness. I washed my face in the utility sink, shaved with cold water because the downstairs bathroom was for guests today, and put on my brown-green flannel shirt. The one Ruth used to say made me look like I belonged in a calendar about honest men and bad weather. I almost laughed thinking about that. Then I looked at myself in the little cracked mirror I kept hanging from a nail near the freezer, and the laugh went away. My beard had gone almost white. My eyes looked smaller than I remembered. Not weak, just tired from pretending I was not being hurt. I brushed a speck of lint from my sleeve and told myself I would get through the meal for Caleb. That had become my rule for almost everything, for Caleb. Be quiet, for Caleb. Don't argue, for Caleb. Don't force Daniel to choose in front of Caleb. Don't make the boys' home colder than it already is. But the older I got, the more I wondered if children are protected by silence or trained by it. When I opened the mudroom door, Melissa was standing there with a basket of folded dish towels in her arms, like she had been waiting for me to enter at the wrong time. Her smile appeared before her warmth did. "Frank," she said, "good, you're up." Not good morning, not happy Thanksgiving. Good, you're up, as if I were a piece of equipment she needed before noon. I said, "Morning, Melissa." She looked me up and down, not with concern, but inspection. "Could you bring in the extra chairs from the shed, and maybe wipe them down first? I don't want people sitting on dust." I looked toward the dining room. The table was already set with white plates, cloth napkins, candles, and the good silver Ruth had given Daniel when he married. I had not seen that silver in years. Melissa had told me once it was too sentimental for everyday use. Apparently, it was perfect for guests. "Sure," I said. "After that, where would you like me?" She blinked like the question annoyed her. "What do you mean?" "For dinner." Her smile tightened. "We're still figuring out seating." "It's a little crowded this year." From the kitchen, Daniel said nothing. I could see his shoulder through the doorway. He was standing by the counter, pretending to read instructions on a foil pan. I waited. Not because I expected courage, exactly, but because some foolish part of me still gave my son chances like coins from an empty pocket. He did not turn around. Melissa shifted the towels against her hip. "You understand, don't you? With my sister's family and Daniel's boss stopping by for dessert, we need the table to feel balanced." Balanced. That was the word she chose. Not full, not crowded. Balanced. As if my presence had weight that could tip the room the wrong way. I said, "I'll get the chairs." Outside, the November air had a damp bite to it, and the shed door stuck the way it always did when the weather turned. I pulled it open with my bad shoulder, stacked 3 folding chairs under one arm, and carried them back across the yard. Through the dining room window, I could see Melissa arranging flowers in the center of the table. Daniel stood beside her, nodding at something she said. For just a second, I saw him at 10 years old, standing on a chair in our old kitchen while Ruth taught him how to mash potatoes. He had flour on his nose and kept asking if Grandpa would come for dinner. Back then, he could not imagine a table without family. Now, he could not imagine defending one. I wiped the chairs clean in the garage because Melissa did not want dirt in the house. Caleb found me there just after 11. He slipped in quietly, wearing a blue sweater that made him look older than he was, though his hair still stuck up in the back like he had wrestled his pillow and lost.
Grandpa,
he said. Hey, buddy. I was leaning one chair against the wall to dry. You hiding from your mother or from the turkey? He did not smile. That was the first thing I noticed. Caleb usually carried some little spark with him, even when the house felt heavy. That morning, he looked like he had swallowed a secret that was too big for his body. Mom said not to bother you, he said. Your mom says a lot of things. I tried to keep my voice gentle. You're never bothering me. He came closer and glanced back at the mudroom door. Are you eating with us today? I wiped my hands on a rag. I hope so. His face changed, just a little. Children try to hide fear by looking serious, but seriousness never fits them right. There's no chair for you, he said. I looked at the 3 folding chairs I had just carried in. There are chairs.
No,
he said, almost whispering.
I mean at the table.
I had known it already, but hearing it from him put a weight behind my ribs. Maybe they're still figuring it out. Caleb stared at the concrete floor. Grandpa, why don't you just come live somewhere else? That question hurt because it was so reasonable. I could have told him about money, about pride, about how my name was tied up in that house, about how I had put more into it than Melissa would ever admit. I could have told him that leaving would feel like surrendering the last place my son and grandson both existed in the same room as me. But Caleb was 9. A 9-year-old should not have to carry the explanations adults build to excuse their cowardice. So I said, sometimes you stay close to people because you're not done loving them. He frowned. Even if they're mean? I folded the rag slowly. Especially then sometimes. But not forever. He looked up fast when I said that. Not forever? No, I said. A man can be patient without being gone. Caleb opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then shut it when Melissa called his name from inside. Not a normal call, a warning call. He flinched. I saw it. I wished I had not, because once you see a child flinch at his own mother's voice, you cannot unsee it. Go on, I said. I'll be in soon. He turned to leave, then stopped with his hand on the door.
Grandpa?
Yeah? His eyes moved to the house, then back to me.
If I tell you something later, will you be mad?
I felt the air shift then, though I did not yet know why. At you? I asked. He nodded. Never. He studied my face like he needed to make sure that promise had a floor under it. Then he slipped back into the house. I stood there for a long time after he left, one hand resting on the back of the folding chair, listening to laughter begin inside. Guests started arriving after noon. Melissa's sister came first with her husband and two girls who walked through the house like they had been told not to touch anything. Then came a neighbor couple from church, then Daniel's boss and his wife, though Melissa had called it just dessert because saying the boss was coming for Thanksgiving dinner would have made the whole performance too obvious. Every time the doorbell rang, Melissa's voice rose into that polished register she used for people whose opinions mattered.
Come in, come in. We're so happy you're here.
Oh, don't worry about your shoes. Daniel, take their coats. Not once did she say, Frank, come meet everyone. I carried firewood to the porch. I fixed the wobbly leg on the dessert table. I found an extra extension cord for the warming tray. I opened jars that were too tight, lifted pans that were too heavy, and reached shelves that were too high. I was useful all afternoon, which meant no one had to decide whether I was family. Around 3, I stepped into the kitchen to wash my hands, and Melissa blocked the sink with her body before I even reached it. Use the utility sink, Frank. I just cleaned this area. Her sister was standing nearby, slicing cranberry bread. She glanced at me, then away, embarrassed but not brave. That is how most people are around cruelty when it is dressed nicely. They recognize it, but they wait for someone else to name it. I said, "Of course." Daniel was behind me. I could feel him there before I saw him.
Fathers know the shape of their children's silence. I turned slightly. His face was pale, his mouth tight. For 1 second, I thought this might be it. The moment. The small rebellion. The sentence that would not fix everything but might at least prove I had not raised a stranger. Dad can use the kitchen sink, Melissa. That was all he had to say. 7 words. He looked at me, then at her, then down at the dish towel in his hands. "Turkey's almost ready," he said. I nodded like that did not finish breaking something in me. By the time we gathered for dinner, the dining room glowed. Candles trembled in little glass holders. The turkey sat in the center like a magazine photograph. The maple leaves Melissa had scattered along the runner were fake, but expensive enough to fool you from a distance. Everyone took their places while Melissa directed traffic with a laugh. Her sister's family on one side, the neighbors near the end, Daniel's boss beside Daniel, Melissa at the head where Ruth's chair used to be when she visited years ago. Caleb hovered near the doorway, looking from chair to chair. I stood behind him with my hands folded in front of me. The only empty seat was a folding chair near the sideboard, not tucked under the table but angled slightly away from it, as if someone had remembered me after the room was already complete. Melissa touched the back of it and said, "Frank, I put you here so you'll have more space. I know your knees bother you." My knees did not bother me. My back did, my shoulder did, my hands did in the cold. But my knees had never asked for exile. I looked at the chair, then at the table, then at my son. Daniel swallowed. His boss glanced between us with the confused politeness of a man realizing he had walked into a family story that had started long before he arrived. Caleb said, "Grandpa can sit by me." The room went quiet enough that I heard the candle flame pop. Melissa's smile stayed on, but her eyes hardened. "Sweetheart, we already made the seating arrangement." "I can move," Caleb said. "Caleb," Daniel warned softly. "Not Melissa. Daniel." He used his father voice on the only person at that table trying to do the right thing. Caleb's cheeks flushed. I placed my hand lightly on his shoulder. "It's fine, buddy." He looked up at me, angry now, not with me but for me, which somehow hurt worse. "It's not fine." Melissa laughed, a thin little sound. "He's very sensitive about his grandfather. It's sweet.
But Frank likes being close to the kitchen, don't you, Frank? There it was again, the invitation to help her lie. Everyone looked at me. I had 3 years of practice nodding at moments like that. 3 years of saving the room from the truth. 3 years of making myself smaller so other people could remain comfortable. My mouth even started to form the old surrender. Then Caleb's hand found my sleeve under the edge of the tablecloth, and his fingers gripped hard.
Not like a child asking for comfort. Like a child begging me not to disappear again. I said, I like sitting with my family. Nobody moved. Melissa's smile faltered for half a second, then returned brighter than before.
"Of course," she said. "That's what I meant."
It was not, and everybody knew it.
But dinner began anyway because families are very good at stepping around bodies as long as nobody says corpse. I sat on the folding chair by the sideboard with my plate balanced too far from the table edge. Caleb kept twisting in his seat to check on me. Daniel carved turkey and served his boss first. Melissa poured wine for the adults, sparkling cider for the children, and conversation for anyone who looked too closely at me. She talked about renovations. That was the part that almost made me laugh. She told Daniel's boss they had been updating the house little by little, that old farmhouses were charming but demanding,
that they had sacrificed so much to make it a proper family home. The boss's wife asked what they had renovated first. Melissa did not miss a beat.
"Storage and layout, mostly. We've had to rethink how everyone uses the space."
I stared down at my plate. Storage and layout. That was one way to describe putting your father-in-law between the mower and the snow tires.
The neighbor woman asked if I lived nearby. Before I could answer, Melissa said, "Frank stays with us. He helps Daniel around the property." Daniel's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Caleb whispered, "He's Dad's father." The neighbor woman blinked. "Oh." Melissa set her wine glass down very carefully. "Of course he is, honey. No one said otherwise." But she had. Not directly. She never did anything directly when a sideways wound would bleed longer. The meal went on. People complimented the turkey. Daniel's boss told a story about airport delays. Melissa's sister laughed too loudly at things that were not funny.
I chewed, swallowed, and answered when spoken to. Years of factory work teach a man how to stand near noise without becoming part of it. But Caleb grew quieter with every minute. He barely touched his food. Twice I caught him watching his mother. Once I saw him watching the hallway where Melissa kept a little writing desk beneath the family calendar. That desk had drawers she told everyone were for coupons and school forms. I had seen her close those drawers too quickly more than once. After dinner, the adults moved into that soft, lazy hour when plates are half cleared and people pretend they are helping by carrying one spoon at a time. Melissa sent Daniel to the porch with his boss to talk about that opportunity you mentioned. She sent her sister to check on the pies. She sent Caleb to wash his hands, even though he had not spilled anything. She sent me to the garage to bring in another folding table for desserts. "The one against the left wall," she said. "And be careful." There are documents stacked nearby. Documents. The word landed differently that day because of Caleb's question in the garage.
"If I tell you something later, will you be mad?" I walked out slowly. The garage smelled like cold metal and cardboard. My cot sat against the wall, blanket folded, pillow flattened in the middle. For a strange second, seeing it from the doorway made it look like someone else's bed. Some other old fool's place. I found the folding table and lifted it away from the wall.
Behind it was a stack of banker's boxes I had not noticed before, partly covered by a plastic tablecloth. One lid was not fully closed. On top, I saw a folder with Daniel's name. Under it, a corner of paper with the county recorder's office printed along the top. I did not touch it. That is important. I did not open the box. I did not go digging. Some men might have. Maybe I should have. But when you have been made to feel like an intruder in your own family,
You become careful, even around things you have every right to question. I carried the table inside. As I passed the hallway, I heard Melissa's voice through the partly closed office door. Low, controlled, angry.
"No, he hasn't signed anything yet," she said.
I stopped walking. Not long, just enough for the words to enter me.
"I told you Daniel is handling it. Frank doesn't need to be involved until we know the cleanest way to remove the issue."
Remove the issue. I looked down at my hands on the folding table. My hands were steady. My chest was not. Before I could hear more, the office door opened. Melissa stepped out with her phone in her hand. She froze when she saw me. Then her face rearranged itself.
"Frank," she said, "why are you standing there?"
I lifted the table slightly. "Bringing this in." Her eyes searched my face. I gave her nothing. That is one thing old working men are good at. We can hide pain behind a blank look until it becomes indistinguishable from patience.
"Well, don't block the hall," she said. "Guests are here."
I nodded and carried the table to the dining room. But from that moment on, the room sounded far away. Remove the issue. He hasn't signed anything yet. Daniel is handling it. Those phrases kept circling like birds over a ditch. I looked for my son, but he was still on the porch with his boss, smiling the smile of a man trying to be seen as successful by someone who did not know he could not even defend his father at dinner. I looked for Caleb. He stood near the staircase, watching me with his whole face tight. He had heard something. Maybe not what I heard. Maybe worse. When dessert was served, I could not taste the pie. Melissa placed a slice in front of me and said,
"Pumpkin, your favorite, right?"
It was Ruth's favorite. Mine was apple. Daniel knew that. Caleb knew that. Melissa knew it too, I think. Some mistakes are too perfectly aimed to be accidents. I took one bite anyway. Pride can make a man refuse food. Grief makes him swallow it. Around 9, the guests began to leave. Coats were gathered, leftovers wrapped, cheeks kissed, promises made about Christmas. Daniel's boss shook my hand on the way out and said, "Good to meet you, sir." Sir. One word from a near stranger, and I nearly lost my composure because it had been so long since anyone in that house addressed me like I had a place in the world. After the door closed, Melissa exhaled like an actress stepping off stage.
"Well,"
she said.
"that went beautifully."
Caleb looked at me. Daniel started stacking plates. I stood near the dining room doorway, exactly where I had stood when the day began to turn. Melissa noticed.
"Frank, you can leave those dishes. I'll handle the kitchen. You must be tired."
You must be tired. That was her polite way of sending me back to the garage. Daniel did not look up. Caleb did. And this time he did not wait. He walked straight to me, took my sleeve, and pulled me toward the mudroom.
"I need to show Grandpa something,"
he said. Melissa's head snapped toward him. "Caleb, not now."
"It's for school,"
he lied, badly. Brave children are not always good liars. Melissa stepped closer. "I said not now."
The room held its breath. Daniel finally turned. "Caleb, listen to your mother." Caleb's grip tightened. I felt his little fingers shaking. Something in me, something old and nearly buried, rose to its feet. I said, "He can show me." Melissa's eyes moved to me. "Frank, don't encourage him." "He can show me," I repeated. My voice was quiet, but it did not bend. That was the first time in 3 years I saw uncertainty cross her face. Not fear yet, just the sudden discomfort of a person who has pushed on a door 100 times and finally feels it push back. Caleb pulled me into the garage and shut the door behind us. The sound of the latch clicking felt louder than it should have. He stood with his back against the door, breathing fast. "Grandpa," he whispered,
Mom told the lawyer to change your name on the house. The sentence was the same one you heard at the beginning of this story, but living it was different. A story can make a sentence sound dramatic. In that garage, from that boy's mouth, it sounded like a small body trying to carry an adult crime without dropping it. I crouched as much as my back allowed. "Caleb, look at me." He did, and his eyes were wet. "Where did you hear that?" "In her office," he said. "Not today. Before. And today, too. She said if your name was still there, everything would be complicated. She said Dad was supposed to get you to sign after Thanksgiving because you'd be emotional. She said—" He stopped and pressed his lips together. "What did she say?" His voice broke. "She said nobody would believe you knew what you were signing anyway, because you sleep in the garage." I stayed very still. There are words that hit like fists, And there are words that slide between your ribs so cleanly you do not feel the blood until later. That was one of those. Nobody would believe you knew what you were signing anyway, because you sleep in the garage. So that was the shape of it. Not just disrespect, not just cruelty. A record. A picture they had been painting slowly. Old man in the garage, old man dependent, old man confused, old man outside the household, old man who could be guided into signing what was best. My daughter-in-law had not only humiliated me, she had been turning my humiliation into evidence. Caleb started crying then, silently, which is the worst way children cry, because it means they have learned noise is dangerous. "Are you mad?" he asked. "Not at you." "Dad said not to talk about house stuff." "Your dad said that?" He nodded. I closed my eyes for a second, not because I was surprised, because I was not. "Did your father know what your mother was doing?" Caleb wiped his nose with his sleeve. "I don't know. He said Mom understands papers better. He said you get confused when things are legal." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I had spent my life reading machine schematics, pension documents, loan agreements, mortgage papers, insurance forms, tax notices, medical bills, and every fine print trap working people are expected to survive without lawyers standing beside them. But in my son's house, I had become confused because confusion was convenient. I put both hands on Caleb's shoulders. "You did the right thing telling me." "She'll be mad." "Maybe." His face crumpled. "I don't want her to hate me." That was when my anger found its proper place. Not in my hands, not in my voice, in my spine. I stood up slowly. "Listen to me, Caleb. Adults who ask children to protect lies are the ones doing wrong, not the children who tell the truth." He nodded, but he was still scared. I took Ruth's old Bible from the crate beside my cot and opened it to where I kept the drawing Caleb had made.
The one with me outside the house. Behind it was Ruth's bent photograph. Behind that was a folded copy of the original paperwork from when Daniel and Melissa bought the house. The part I had kept because Ruth always said, "Keep paper, Frank. Paper remembers when people don't." I had not looked at it in years. My name was there, not as some confused old dependent, as the man who had put money down when the bank hesitated, as the man who held an interest that was supposed to protect me from exactly this kind of family weather. I slid the paper back into the Bible and reached for my phone. Caleb watched me. "Who are you calling?" "Someone who reads papers for a living." "The police?" "Not yet." My attorney, Howard Bell, had handled Ruth's estate, my pension dispute, and the original review of the house arrangement years earlier.
He was the kind of man who sounded half asleep even at noon, but he remembered everything that mattered. When he answered, his voice was rough. "Frank, do you know what time it is?"
11, I said, "on Thanksgiving."
"Then either someone's dead or someone's about to be sued."
I looked at Caleb, then turned slightly so the boy would not have to carry every word. "Howard, I think someone is trying to remove my name from the house." Silence. Then the sleep left his voice. "Who?" "My daughter-in-law. Maybe my son."
"Did you sign anything?"
"No."
"Did anyone ask you to?"
"Not yet." "Do they have access to your personal documents?" I looked around the garage, at the bins, at the boxes, at the mail basket on the freezer where my bank statements had sat for 3 years. "They might." Howard exhaled. "Frank, listen carefully. Do not accuse anyone tonight. Do not sign anything. Do not drink anything they hand you if it makes you less alert.
Do not leave any papers where they can reach them. Tomorrow morning, you bring me everything you have: deed copy, tax records, old closing papers, mail, anything with signatures. I'll pull the county records before you arrive."
"Howard."
"What?"
I swallowed. "My grandson heard her say nobody would believe I understood what I was signing because I sleep in the garage." The line went quiet again, this time longer. When Howard spoke, his voice was lower.
"You sleep where?"
I looked at the cot, the folded blanket, the concrete floor, the little crate with my pill bottle and Ruth's photograph. For 3 years I had hidden that fact from people who might have helped me, because shame is a lock you close from the inside. "In the garage," I said, "for 3 years." Howard did not curse often. He did then, quietly, professionally, like a man making a note he planned to use later. "Bring photos," he said, "of the cot, the room, your belongings, everything. And Frank?" "Yeah?"
"Tomorrow morning, you stop treating this like a family misunderstanding." After I hung up, Caleb stood very still. "Are you leaving?" he asked. I looked toward the house door. Through it I could hear Daniel and Melissa talking, their voices low and tense. Maybe she knew. Maybe she sensed something had shifted. Predators often feel the air change before the trap breaks. "Not tonight," I said. "But I am done sleeping through what they're doing." Caleb nodded. I took 3 photographs of the garage, the cot, the heater, the bins, the mail basket, my boots under the bed like proof of residence in a place no father should have had to prove. Then I folded the old paperwork inside my flannel jacket and told Caleb to go upstairs, brush his teeth, and say nothing else that night.
He looked scared to leave me. I smiled for him, though my face felt carved from wood. "You already did the brave part," I said. "Now let me do the old man part." He almost smiled. Almost. Then he went inside.
I stayed in the garage with the lights off for a long time, sitting on the cot, listening to the house settle above me. Near midnight, Daniel opened the mudroom door. He did not step all the way in. Light from the hallway cut across the concrete between us.
"Dad?"
He said.
"Yeah?"
"Melissa says Caleb's upset."
"He is." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. I hated that gesture now. It had become the flag he raised before surrendering.
"She thinks you talk to him about adult things."
I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the gray beginning near his temples, at the soft stomach he had developed from office lunches, at the tired eyes he had inherited from me and used for excuses instead of work. "Did you come out here to ask if your son is all right?" I said, "or to ask if your wife is angry?" His mouth opened, then closed.
"That's not fair."
"No," I said, "it isn't." For a moment I thought he might walk in, sit on the crate, look around,
See the cot like he had never seen it before. Say, Dad, how did we get here? Say, I'm sorry. Say anything that belonged to a son. Instead, he stayed in the doorway.
"We'll talk tomorrow," he said.
"Will we?"
He flinched. "Good. Not enough, but good." "Get some sleep," he said. The door closed before I could answer. I looked at the place where he had stood and finally let myself feel the full size of it. Melissa may have built the cage, but Daniel had held the door. The next morning I woke before sunrise, not that I had slept much. The garage was bitter cold, and my mind kept replaying every paper I had signed in the last 5 years, every envelope that had gone missing, every time Melissa had offered to handle something for me. I packed a small canvas bag with the old deed copy, property tax letters, bank records, Ruth's photograph, Caleb's drawing, and the Bible that had kept them safer than my own family had. Before leaving, I made the cot exactly as I always did. Blanket folded.
Pillow straight, boots aligned underneath. I wanted a photograph of the place as they had made it, not as anger might rearrange it. At 7:30, Melissa came into the garage, wearing a robe and slippers that probably cost more than my winter coat. She looked surprised to see me dressed.
"Going somewhere?"
"Errands." Her eyes dropped to the canvas bag.
"On Black Friday morning?"
Lawyers don't care much for sales. That was the first open shot I fired. Small, but it landed. Her face went still.
"Excuse me?"
I met her eyes. I said I have errands. Daniel appeared behind her, hair messy, face drawn.
"Dad, what's going on?"
There are moments when telling the truth too early only teaches liars how to prepare. Howard had warned me, do not accuse anyone yet. So I walked past them both and said, I'll know more when I get back. Melissa reached for my arm. I looked down at her hand before it touched me. She stopped. That was new, too. For 3 years, everyone in that house had assumed I could be directed with a phrase, a sigh, a look, a little pressure disguised as concern. But standing there with my papers in a canvas bag, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not victory, not even confidence. Recognition.
I was still Frank Hollis. I had been cold, humiliated, ignored, and foolishly patient. But I was still the man who knew how to read a document, fix a machine, bury a wife, raise a son, and stand up when the floor finally stopped shaking. Howard's office was above an old pharmacy on Main Street, the kind of place with narrow stairs and carpet that had given up sometime in the 90s. He was waiting with coffee, a yellow legal pad, and the expression of a man who had already found something ugly. He did not waste time asking how I was. Good lawyers know sometimes kindness is less useful than speed. "Sit," he said. I sat. He opened a folder. "I pulled the property records at 6 this morning."
My hands tightened around the coffee cup. "And?"
"Your name is still attached to the house." I breathed for the first time since Caleb's whisper. Howard lifted one finger. "But—" There is always a but when a lawyer does not smile. He turned the folder toward me. "There have been inquiries, more than one. Someone requested information about transfer options, survivorship language, and removal of an interested party from title. The language used was careful, too careful. Whoever asked did not say you had agreed. They asked what would be required if an elderly family member was no longer living in the main residence and was mentally declining." The coffee in my stomach turned sour. Mentally declining. "That phrase appears twice." He slid another page forward. "There is also a draft quitclaim form. Not filed, not valid, but prepared. Your name typed here. Daniel's name here. Melissa's contact email attached to the inquiry." I stared at the paper.
Seeing your name on a document you did not authorize is a strange kind of violation, like finding your photograph in a stranger's wallet.
"Did Daniel know?" Howard leaned back. "I can't prove what he knew from this, not yet. But his name benefits, hers coordinates. Could she have done it without him? Prepared? Yes. Filed? Not properly without signatures and notarization. But pressure can create signatures. Confusion can create signatures. Shame can create signatures. And if they had enough people believing you were dependent, isolated, and not fully aware—" He stopped because he did not need to finish. The garage finished for him. I took the photographs from my phone and showed him. The cot, the heater, the bins, the mail basket. Howard's jaw tightened in that quiet, professional way again. "Frank," he said, "this is not just about property. This is elder abuse territory." I looked away. Men of my generation do not like that word attached to us.
Abuse sounded like something that happened to helpless people. I had not wanted to think of myself as helpless. Howard seemed to know what I was thinking.
"Being mistreated doesn't mean you're weak," he said. "It means someone mistreated you." That sentence did more damage to my composure than all the legal papers. I had spent 3 years explaining away cruelty because admitting it had a name would mean admitting I had lived inside it. Howard gave me a minute, then continued. He outlined what we would do. Secure certified copies. Sends notice that no transfer or alteration involving my interest was authorized. Preserve evidence. Document the living arrangement. Do not sign anything. Do not discuss strategy in the house. And above all, do not allow Melissa to turn the confrontation into an emotional outburst that made me look unstable. "If this comes to a family scene," he said, "you stay calm. Let the documents speak first. Let them react. I almost smiled.
I've been staying calm for 3 years.
Howard looked at me over his glasses. No, Frank. You've been staying quiet. Different thing. By late afternoon, I had a folder thick enough to feel like a weapon and clean enough to use as one. Certified property record, copies of the inquiries, the draft form, Howard's written summary, a page of instructions. He offered to come with me. I said no. Not because I wanted to be a hero, because some rooms have to hear the truth from the person they tried to erase. On the drive back, the sky had that flat November color that makes every field look honest and unforgiving. I passed the diner where Ruth and I used to split pie after church. I passed the hardware store where Daniel had once spent 20 minutes choosing his first hammer with money from his 10th birthday. I passed the elementary school where Caleb's Thanksgiving handprint turkey was probably drying on a classroom wall, bright feathers around a little brown palm.
All of those places belonged to the same life somehow. The one where I had been loved. The one where I had been useful. The one where I had mistaken being needed for being safe. When I pulled into the driveway, Melissa was watching from the front window. She stepped away before I got out of the truck, but I had seen her. Daniel's car was there, so was Melissa's sister's. Good, I thought. Not because I wanted an audience for revenge, because lies like hers survive best in private. I walked through the garage first. I do not know why. Maybe habit. Maybe farewell. The cot was still there. The space heater was still plugged in. My folded blanket waited like a loyal dog. I placed my hand on the back of the cot and let myself remember every night I had convinced myself this was temporary. Then I picked up the pillow, looked at the dent my head had left in it, and set it on the crate. I would not sleep there again. Inside, voices went quiet when I entered. Melissa stood near the dining table with her arms crossed. Daniel was by the kitchen island. Caleb sat on the bottom stair, eyes wide. Melissa's sister hovered in the living room entrance, pretending not to hover.
"Where were you?"
Melissa asked. Not worried, accusing. I held the folder at my side. With my attorney. Daniel closed his eyes, just for a second, but I saw it. Melissa laughed once, sharp and false.
"Your attorney? Frank, what on earth for?" I looked at my grandson. He was staring at the folder like it might explode. I gave him the smallest nod I could. Then I looked back at Melissa. "Because last night," I said, "a child in this house told the truth before the adults did." No one spoke. The dining room still smelled faintly of turkey, candle wax, and the flowers Melissa had arranged to make the house look warm. The table had been cleared, but one fake maple leaf remained on the floor near Ruth's old chair. I bent, picked it up, and placed it on the table.
My hands were steady. Howard had told me to let the documents speak first. He was right. But before paper speaks, a man has to enter the room as himself. So I pulled out a chair at the dining table, not the folding chair by the sideboard, not the edge, not the place Melissa had assigned me. I pulled out the chair at the center of the table, sat down, and laid the folder in front of me. "Daniel," I said without looking away from Melissa, "sit down." My son did. That, at least, he still knew how to do. Daniel sat down slowly, but he did not sit like a man ready to listen. He sat like a boy, waiting to find out how much trouble he was in. That was one of the saddest things about watching your child grow older without growing braver.
He still had the same eyes he had when he was 12, and Ruth caught him lying about a broken window. Back then, shame could still lead him toward honesty. Now shame only seemed to lead him toward whatever exit was closest. Melissa remained standing. Her arms were crossed, her chin lifted, and her face had gone into that polished, careful stillness people use when they are trying to decide whether a room can still be controlled. "Frank," she said, "I don't know what Caleb told you, but this is getting ridiculous." I looked at the folder, then at her. "I haven't said Caleb told me anything." That was the first crack, small but visible. Her eyes flicked toward my grandson on the stairs. Caleb lowered his hand. Daniel saw it too. For once, he saw something. "Dad," he said, "maybe we should talk about this privately." "We had 3 years privately," I said. "Privately put me in the garage." Melissa's sister made a small sound from the living room doorway. Melissa turned on her. "Karen, you don't need to stand there." Karen did not move. That surprised me. Maybe she had been waiting years for someone else to say the first sentence. Maybe most cowards are not loyal to cruelty. They are only loyal to the side that looks safest. And for the first time in that house, Melissa did not look safe. I opened the folder and placed the first page on the table. Not dramatically, not with a slap. I laid it flat and turned it toward my son. "This is the certified property record Howard pulled this morning." Daniel looked at it, then at me. "Howard Bell?" "My attorney," I said. "The one your mother trusted. The one who handled her estate. The one who reviewed the original house papers before I helped you buy this place." Melissa laughed again, but there was no music in it now. "Helped us buy? Frank, let's not rewrite history." "I'm not rewriting anything," I said. "That's why I brought paper." Daniel picked up the page. His eyes moved across the lines, searching for a version of the truth that would not cost him anything. I watched the moment he found my name. It was not surprise exactly. It was more like recognition trying to push through denial. "I knew you helped with the down payment," he said. "You knew more than that." "Dad," read the next line. His jaw tightened. He read it. Melissa stepped closer. "Daniel, you don't have to entertain this. Your father is upset. He's been confused lately, and I think this whole situation is becoming unhealthy." I looked at her then. Fully. "Say that again." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Say the word confused again while the folder is open." The room went quiet. Daniel's hand froze over the page. Melissa's mouth tightened because she understood.
Finally, that I had not come in with feelings. I had come in with a trail. I slid the second page forward. This is a record of inquiries made about removing an interested party from title. Not filed, not completed, but asked about. More than once. Daniel frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means someone wanted to know how to get my name off the house." Melissa said, "That's absurd." I placed the third page beside it. This is the draft quitclaim form Howard found attached to one of those inquiries. My name typed where a signature would eventually go. Your name typed as the person who would benefit. And Melissa's email used as the contact. Daniel looked at his wife. She did not look back at him. That told me more than an argument would have. "Melissa," he said quietly, "what is this?" She rolled her eyes, but her fingers had started worrying the edge of her sleeve.
It's nothing. I asked a question. Adults are allowed to ask questions about estate planning.
Estate planning, I said. Is that what you call it when the man is still alive, sleeping beside the lawnmower, and nobody has asked him what he wants? You're making this ugly. No, I said. I'm making it visible. Karen put one hand over her mouth. Caleb was still on the stairs, his eyes wide and wet, and I hated that he had to see it. But another part of me knew he had already been seeing it for years. Children see what adults hide badly. They simply lack the power to name it. Daniel set the paper down. Melissa, did you prepare this? I gathered information. Did you prepare this? He repeated, louder. That was the first time his voice had risen for me in 3 years. And even then it was not really for me. It was because the lie had touched him. Melissa turned toward him sharply. Don't you dare act like you didn't know we had to do something. There it was. Not a confession in the clean way decent people imagine, but the kind of sentence guilty people throw when they are angry someone has left them alone in the fire. Daniel went pale. Do something? Yes, Daniel. Do something. Your father has been living here for years. He contributes nothing meaningful, he takes up space, and legally it is complicated. I almost smiled at that, not because it was funny, because after 3 years of velvet words, the truth finally came out wearing its real face. I contribute nothing meaningful, I said. Melissa turned back to me. Frank, don't twist my words. I fixed the furnace twice, replaced the gutters on the east side, paid the property tax shortfall in 22 when Daniel's bonus didn't come, covered Caleb's dental surgery when insurance denied part of it, rebuilt the garage opener, repaired the back steps your mother nearly fell through, bought the water heater after you told Daniel you could put it on a credit card you'd already maxed out. Daniel stared at the table. I kept my eyes on Melissa. But you're right. None of that was meaningful to you because none of it gave you my signature. Melissa's face flushed. You are unbelievable. No, I said. What's unbelievable is that you thought the garage would make me look too small to own what was mine. Daniel whispered, The garage? I looked at him then, and for the first time that evening, my anger moved away from Melissa and found the person it had hurt most to face. Yes, Daniel. The garage. The place your wife called temporary. The place you walked past every morning. The place you sent your son to visit me like he was sneaking food to a stray dog. He flinched. Good. I wanted him to. I wanted him to feel 1 clean second of what he had taught me to live with quietly. Dad, I didn't know it was that bad. I leaned back in the chair. You didn't have to know every paper she touched. You only had to notice where your father was sleeping. That sentence did what the documents could not. It broke the room open. Karen started crying softly near the doorway. Caleb covered his mouth. Daniel looked down at his hands, and I saw him seeing them, maybe for the first time, as hands that had done nothing. Melissa moved fast then. People like her do not fear sadness. They fear silence after truth, because silence gives everyone time to understand. This is emotional manipulation, she said. He's doing this because he doesn't want to accept that things have changed. Daniel, your father needs help. Real help. He is not thinking clearly. I took another page from the folder. Howard expected you to say that. Her face changed. I placed the page down. This is his written summary. He notes the language used in the inquiry. Elderly family member, no longer living in the main residence,
mentally declining. Those are the words someone used to ask about removing me. Daniel picked up the paper with both hands, his lips parted. "Melissa." She reached for it, but he pulled it back.
That was the first time all day he protected anything from her. Too late to be noble, but not too late to matter.
"You told them he was mentally declining?" he asked. I described the situation. "You told them he didn't live in the main residence?" "He doesn't." The words came out before she could dress them. She looked at me, then at the others, realizing what she had admitted. I said, "Because you put me in the garage." She pointed at me. "You agreed to that." "I agreed to a week." "You never complained." "You made sure complaint would sound like ingratitude." Her eyes were bright now, not with tears but with rage. "I fed you. I kept a roof over your head." I looked around the dining room, at the walls I had helped patch, at the light fixture I had installed, at Ruth's silver on the sideboard, at my grandson on the stairs. "No," I said. "You kept a roof near me, not over me." Karen whispered, "Melissa, what did you do?" Melissa spun toward her. "Stay out of this."
"He slept in the garage for 3 years?" Karen asked, and there was something in her voice I had not expected. Shame. Maybe she had suspected. Maybe she had laughed along with smaller lies and now saw where they led.
"He wanted privacy," Melissa snapped. "Did he?"
Karen looked at me.
"Frank?"
For 3 years, I had protected everyone from the answer to that question. I had nodded at dinner, smiled at neighbors, let Melissa say I liked my space, let Daniel pretend the arrangement was unusual but harmless, let myself become the easiest lie in the house. I was done helping. "No," I said. I did not want to sleep in the garage. Caleb made a sound then, one little broken breath, and Daniel looked at him, really looked. Maybe he saw the boy's red eyes. Maybe he saw the way Caleb pressed himself against the stair rail like he needed it to stay upright. Maybe he finally understood that his son had not been protected by silence. He had been forced to grow up inside it. Daniel stood.
"Caleb, go upstairs." Caleb shook his head.
"No."
"Caleb."
"No,"
he said louder, and his small voice cracked.
"You always tell me to go away when Grandpa matters."
Daniel looked like he had been slapped. Melissa stepped toward the stairs.
"That is enough."
I stood before she reached him. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "Do not move another step toward that boy." She froze. In all our years in that house, I had never spoken to her that way. Maybe that was why it worked. Not because she respected me, but because she had built her power on the belief that I would never force her to test it. Daniel said, "Dad." "No," I said, still looking at Melissa. "Not this time." The folder lay open on the table between us, but the room had moved past paper. Paper had opened the door. Now everyone was staring at what had lived behind it. Melissa's breathing changed, shorter, faster. Her face went pale around the mouth. "You're all being manipulated," she said, but the sentence had lost its spine. "He's bitter. He's lonely. He wants to turn my family against me." "Your family?" I asked. "My wife's silver is on that sideboard. My grandson is on those stairs. My son is sitting at that table. My name is on that deed. And my cot is in your garage. Be careful what you call yours." Her hand went to the back of a chair.
For a moment I thought she was going to throw it. Instead, she gripped it like the floor had shifted. Daniel stood too. "Melissa, did you plan to have him sign something?" She closed her eyes. "It would have simplified things." "Did you plan to have him sign something?" "Daniel, you said yourself he couldn't stay here forever." "That is not what I asked." She opened her eyes, furious now. "Fine, yes. I was going to ask him to sign. After the holiday, when everyone was calm. Because somebody had to think about our future." Our future. Not Caleb's. Not Daniel's, really. Hers.
The future she had been arranging one humiliation at a time. Daniel sank back into the chair. I watched the last of his denial leave him, and I felt no satisfaction in it. That surprised me. I had imagined, on the drive home, that seeing him understand would feel like justice. It did not. It felt like finding a ruined tool you once relied on. You can see where it failed, but that does not make it useful again. "You used me," Daniel said. Melissa looked at him with open contempt. "I carried this house while you avoided every difficult decision." He stared at her. "You put my father in the garage." "You let me." The room stopped breathing. There are sentences that cannot be taken back because they are too true. Daniel looked at me, and I saw his face collapse. Not dramatically, quietly. The way a man looks when he realizes the defense he wanted to make for himself has already been destroyed by the person he was going to defend. "Dad," he said. I raised a hand. "Not yet." If I let him apologize then, it would have been for his comfort, not mine. Some apologies are just another way of asking the injured person to clean up the room.
Melissa swayed slightly. Karen stepped forward. "Mel?" "Don't touch me," Melissa said. But her voice was thin. She looked at the papers, then at Daniel, then at me, then toward the stairs where Caleb was watching everything. I think that was when she understood what had actually happened. The documents were bad, the attorney was bad, Daniel's shock was bad, but Caleb's face was the part she could not control. Her son had seen her. Not as the polished mother, not as the perfect host, not as the woman who managed everything because no one else could. He had seen the machinery. And once a child sees that, no amount of cranberry sauce and Christmas cards can put the mask back on. Melissa reached for her water glass. Her fingers missed it the first time, tapped the rim, then knocked it sideways. Water spread across the table,
Soaking the corner of Howard's summary. Daniel moved to catch the glass. Karen gasped. Melissa took one step back, her face suddenly blank, and folded to the floor beside the dining chair. She did not fall like a movie villain. There was no dramatic crash, no grand punishment from heaven. Her knees simply failed, and her body followed. Karen rushed to her. Daniel half stood, then stopped, torn between husband and father like he had been torn for years and chosen wrong almost every time. Caleb cried out, "Mom!" and started down the stairs. I moved aside so he could pass. I was angry, but I was not cruel. A child's fear for his mother does not vanish because his mother has done wrong. Karen checked Melissa's breathing. "She fainted," she said. "She's breathing." Daniel called her name, touching her shoulder. Melissa stirred, weak and disoriented. The room became chaos for a few minutes. Wet papers were lifted, towels brought. Caleb hovered, crying. Karen told everyone to give her air. Daniel asked if he should call an ambulance. Melissa opened her eyes and whispered, "No."
Even on the floor, she was trying to manage the scene. I gathered the documents that mattered and put them back into the folder. Howard had given me copies for a reason. Then I stood at the table and watched my family kneel around the woman who had tried to turn me into a legal inconvenience. I did not feel triumphant. That is another lie people tell about justice. They imagine the truth arrives like music and the guilty collapse and the injured finally breathe. But sometimes justice arrives smelling like spilled water and cold turkey, with a child crying on the stairs and your son looking at you like he has just realized you are older than he thought. After Melissa was helped to the couch, Karen sat beside her, not warmly, but responsibly. Daniel remained in the dining room. Caleb stood near me, unsure where he was allowed to belong. That broke my heart more than anything.
A 9-year-old should not have to choose corners after telling the truth. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go get your coat, buddy." Daniel looked up.
"Where are you taking him?"
"For a drive."
"Dad, we need to talk."
"We will."
"Now!"
I looked at him then, and something in my face must have reminded him I had once been the man who taught him what that word meant. "No, Daniel, you needed to talk 3 years ago. Tonight, you need to think." He lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." There it was. The thing I had wanted for so long that by the time it arrived, it was too small to hold everything. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy Ruth had adored, the man who had watched me carry chairs for a table where there was no place for me. "I believe you are sorry right now," I said. "That is not the same as repentance." His eyes filled. "What do you want me to do?" "Start by not asking me to tell you how to become decent." He took that like he deserved it, which he did. Caleb came back with his coat. His face was red, and he kept glancing toward the living room where Melissa lay with a cold cloth on her forehead, Karen beside her. "Is Mom going to be okay?" he asked. I softened my voice. "She's breathing. Your aunt is with her. Your dad is here." He nodded, but guilt had already started working on him. Children are quick to blame themselves for adult consequences. I could see it forming. I would not let it harden. I knelt slowly, ignoring the pain in my back. "Caleb, listen to me. What happened in this room did not happen because you told the truth. It happened because people lied for too long." His chin trembled. "But if I didn't say anything—" "Then wrong would have stayed hidden." "Mom fell." "Your mother fell because grown-up choices caught up with her all at once. That is not your fault." He looked unconvinced, because love makes children vulnerable to guilt. I squeezed his shoulder. "You did not break this family." Daniel made a sound behind me. Maybe a sob, maybe my name. I did not turn. "You told the truth before silence finished breaking it." Caleb stepped into me then, wrapping his arms around my neck, and for the first time that night I nearly lost my steadiness. His little body shook against my chest, and I held him the way I had once held Daniel after nightmares, before life taught my son to hide from fear instead of walking through it. I looked over Caleb's shoulder at Daniel. He was crying now, quietly, one hand over his mouth. Maybe he remembered. Maybe he saw the full circle of it. Maybe he understood that a father does not stop needing protection just because his hair turns white. "I'm taking him for Coco," I said. "We'll be back in an hour." Daniel nodded. He did not argue. That was wise. On the way out, I stopped at the garage door. Caleb looked up at me, confused. I opened it and stepped inside one last time. The light buzzed overhead.
The cot sat against the wall,
small and sad and ordinary, which somehow made it worse. There should have been some sign there, some mark on the concrete to show what had happened to a man in that place. But humiliation rarely leaves evidence unless someone thinks to photograph it. I had. Howard had the pictures now. The truth had a record. I took my pillow from the crate, tucked Ruth's photograph and Caleb's drawing safely inside the Bible, and unplugged the space heater. Then I folded the blanket, not because Melissa liked things neat, not because I was still trying to earn a place, but because I refused to leave even that little bed looking defeated. Caleb watched from the doorway. "Are you sleeping here tonight?" he asked. I looked at the cot. Then I looked at him. No. His shoulders dropped with relief so visible it almost made me angry all over again. No child should feel relief because his grandfather is not sleeping on concrete. I picked up the canvas bag and turned off the garage light. As we stepped back into the mudroom, Daniel was standing there. He looked at the pillow under my arm, then at the dark garage behind me.
"Dad," he whispered, "I saw it every day."
I waited. He swallowed hard.
"I saw it every day, and I made it normal."
That was the first honest sentence he had given me in years. I nodded once. "Yes, you did." He cried harder, but he did not defend himself. That mattered. Not enough to heal anything yet, but enough to mark the ground where healing might begin if he ever chose to work instead of wish.
"What happens now?" he asked.
"Howard is sending notices Monday. Nothing gets signed, nothing gets transferred, nothing gets discussed without him present." Daniel nodded quickly. "Okay." "And I do not sleep in the garage again."
"No," he said, almost violently. "No, of course not."
I looked at him. "Do not say of course like it was always obvious." He shut his mouth. "Good." "I'll get the guest room ready," he said. I shook my hand. "Not tonight." His face fell. "Then where will you go?"
"Motel first, then we'll see." "Dad, please, don't leave like this." There it was again. His pain asking to outrank mine because mine made him uncomfortable. I kept my voice calm. "Daniel, I left a little more every night you shut this door behind me. Tonight is just the first time you have to watch." Caleb took my hand. I let him. Daniel stepped aside. We walked through the house, past the dining room, past the table where the folder had opened everything, past the sideboard where Ruth's silver still caught the light. Melissa was awake on the couch. Her face was pale, her hair loosened from its careful shape. She looked at me as I passed, and for once she had no sentence ready, no accusation, no soft insult, no performance, just fear, anger, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding that control is not the same as power when truth enters the room. I did not speak to her.
Not every villain deserves a final line from the person they hurt. Outside, the night was cold, but it felt different from the garage cold. The garage cold had been trapped, stale, humiliating. This cold was open, honest. It touched my face and moved on. Caleb climbed into my truck, still holding the Bible on his lap, because he had asked if he could carry it. I started the engine and let it warm. For a minute, neither of us spoke. The farmhouse glowed behind us, every window lit, looking from the road like the kind of home people envy when they do not know where everyone sleeps. Caleb traced the edge of the Bible with one finger.
Grandpa?
Yeah, buddy?
Are you mad at Dad?
I looked through the windshield at the maple trees moving in the dark. Yes. He nodded slowly.
Are you still going to love him?
That question went deeper than he knew. I thought about Daniel as a baby asleep on my chest. Daniel at 5 chasing fireflies. Daniel at 18 refusing to cry at his mother's first cancer scare, and then breaking down in the garage where he thought no one could hear. Daniel at the table tonight, finally seeing me after years of looking away. Love, I had learned, does not always leave when respect does. Sometimes love stays like an old scar, tender when the weather turns. Yes, I said, but loving someone doesn't mean letting them keep hurting you. Caleb looked out the window. Is that what you meant? Patient but not gone? I smiled then, a real one, small but real. You remembered that? I remember everything you tell me. I had to look away for a second. There are gifts so pure they hurt to receive when you know how close adults came to ruining them. Then remember this too, I said. When something is wrong, and everybody in the room is pretending it is normal, the person who tells the truth is not the one causing the trouble. Caleb leaned his head against the seat. Even if people get mad. Especially then. We drove to the only diner open late on Thanksgiving night, the one near the highway where truckers stopped for coffee and pie that was better than it had any right to be. I ordered Caleb hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, and I ordered apple pie because I was done eating Ruth's favorite just because Melissa forgot mine on purpose. Caleb watched the waitress set it down and said, I thought pumpkin was your favorite. No, I said, apple. He absorbed that with the seriousness of a child correcting an official record. Apple, he repeated. I'll remember. And I believed him. That was the thing about children. They can become the keepers of truth if adults do not punish it out of them. We sat in the booth until his breathing slowed and his eyelids grew heavy. He asked if the house would be taken. I told him no, not if I had anything to say about it. He asked if his mom would go to jail. I told him I did not know.
And that grown-up consequences would be handled by grown-ups. He asked if I was poor. I laughed softly and said I was not rich, but I was not helpless. Then he asked the question he had been circling all night. Did I save your house? I looked at him across the table, this boy with whipped cream on his upper lip and fear still sitting behind his eyes, and I knew I had to answer carefully. Not too much weight, not too little truth. You helped me protect it, I said. But more than that, you reminded me I was still allowed to protect myself. He looked down at his mug. I was scared. Brave people usually are. Were you scared? I thought about lying, then decided he had earned better from me. Yes. He looked surprised. You didn't look scared? That's because I'm old. We get better at hiding it. He almost smiled. I don't want to hide things like Dad. That sentence sat between us, heavy and holy. I reached across the table and tapped his hand gently. Then don't. But don't hate him either. Let him show you who he becomes after tonight. Sometimes people wake up late. The waking up doesn't erase what they did while they were sleeping, but it can still matter. Caleb nodded, though I knew he would understand that more when he was older. Maybe one day, when he had a child of his own,
He would remember a Thanksgiving night, a garage cot, a folder on a dining table, and an old man telling him that truth is not cruelty. Maybe that would be enough to break something that had been passed down too quietly. When I brought Caleb back, Daniel was waiting on the porch. He had put on a coat but no gloves, and his hands were red from the cold. I wondered how long he had stood there. Good, I thought, then felt ashamed of the thought, then decided shame had protected the wrong people long enough. A little cold would not kill him. He came down the steps as I parked. "Is he okay?" he asked. "He's tired." Daniel opened Caleb's door.
Caleb looked at me before getting out, asking permission without words. I nodded. "Go on. I'll call tomorrow." "Promise?" "Promise." He hugged me hard, then went to his father. Daniel put an arm around him, awkwardly at first, then tightly. He whispered something into Caleb's hair. I could not hear it. I did not need to. Some apologies belong first to the child who had to become brave because the adults would not. After Caleb went inside, Daniel stayed by the truck. "Guest room is ready," he said. "I moved the boxes." 3 years late. He nodded. "I know." "Do you?" "I'm starting to." That was probably the most honest answer he could give. He looked older under the porch light, not mature, just older. "Melissa's upstairs," he said. "Karen stayed with her. She keeps saying you humiliated her." I looked toward the house. No, I stopped participating in the humiliation she built for me. Daniel closed his eyes. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't fix 3 years in one night." "Tell me where to start." I considered him for a long moment. The easy answer would have been anger. The harder answer was instruction without rescue. You start by telling the truth when it costs you. Not when the folder is already open. Not when someone else has proof. Before that. He nodded, crying again, but quieter this time. "And Caleb?" I said. Daniel looked toward the door. "Yes?" "Do not punish him for saving me from what you ignored." His face crumpled. "I won't." "If I hear that he pays for this in any way, Howard will know before sunrise." "He won't," Daniel said. "I swear." I wanted to believe him. I did not yet. That was another consequence he would have to live with. Trust does not return because someone finally speaks with tears in his eyes. Trust is built the way houses are built, board by board, nail by nail, inspection by inspection. And sometimes the foundation is so damaged that the only honest thing is to start over. I drove to the motel outside town with my canvas bag on the seat beside me and Ruth's Bible under my hand. The room was plain, brown curtains, humming heater, bedspread with a pattern no human being had ever loved. But it was warm. The bed was a bed. The door locked from the inside, and no one in that room had assigned me there to make me smaller. I sat on the edge of the mattress and took off my boots. For a long time, I just looked at them. 3 years, those boots had sat under a cot in a garage while the house I helped protect glowed without me. Now they sat beside a motel bed, and somehow that felt closer to dignity. On Monday, Howard sent the notices. By Wednesday, the county office had flagged any attempted transfer involving my interest. By the next week, Melissa had hired her own lawyer, which told me more than any apology would have. Karen gave a statement about Thanksgiving. Daniel gave Howard access to emails he should have questioned months earlier. He also started therapy, though I did not praise him for it. Basic maintenance is not heroism. Caleb called me every night for 2 weeks. Sometimes he talked about school. Sometimes he asked if I had eaten. Once he asked if my motel room had a garage. I told him no. He laughed then, and the sound put something back in me I had not known was missing. I did eventually return to the house, but not to sleep in the garage. Never again. Howard advised me carefully, and I followed every word. Boundaries went in writing. Property rights stayed protected. Melissa moved out for a while after Daniel told her he would not defend the paperwork or the garage story anymore. Whether their marriage survived is not the point of this story. People always want to know that part, as if the villain leaving means justice is complete. It does not. The real ending was smaller and harder. It came one evening in early December, when Caleb and I stood in the garage together with the door open. Daniel had cleared the cot, the bins, the heater, all of it. The concrete floor was bare, except for a broom leaning in the corner. My son stood behind us, silent, not hiding, not speaking over the moment, just present, which was the first useful thing he had done in that room. Caleb held my hand. "It looks bigger, empty," he said. "Most cages do," I told him. Daniel lowered his head. I let the sentence hit him because it was supposed to. Then Caleb walked to the wall where the cot had been and touched the spot with his palm. "I'm glad you're not here anymore." I went to him and placed my hand over his. "Me too." He looked up at me. "Grandpa?" "Yeah?" "Did the truth save the house?" I thought about the deed, the attorney, the folder, the dining table, Melissa's face when the room finally saw her, Daniel's apology arriving years late, and the cold concrete that no longer had my pillow on it. Then I looked at my grandson, the only person in that house who had been brave before it was safe. "Yes," I said, "but not because houses matter most." He frowned. "Then why?" I squeezed his hand. "Because a house is just walls if the people inside it are too afraid to tell the truth." Caleb nodded slowly, and I saw him storing the words somewhere deep, the way children store what will become their conscience later. Daniel stepped forward then. "Dad," he said, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life being sorry." I looked at him. The old part of me wanted to comfort him, the father part. The part that still remembered fever nights, Little League games, and the first time he called me after Caleb was born, crying because he was terrified he would not be good enough. But another part of me, the part that had survived the garage, knew comfort given too quickly can become permission. "Then spend it being different," I said. He nodded. No defense, no excuse, just a nod. That was enough for that day. I walked to the garage door and pulled it down halfway, then stopped. For 3 years that door had closed between me and the warm part of the house. For 3 years it had been the sound of my son choosing silence. For 3 years it had told me where Melissa thought I belonged. But that day I was the one holding the handle. I looked at Caleb. "Want to help?" He smiled and grabbed the handle beside my hand. Together we pulled the garage door down until it met the concrete with a final, solid sound. Not a prison closing, a chapter ending. People ask me sometimes if I hate Melissa.
The answer is no. Hate takes a lot of energy, and I spent enough energy surviving her. People ask if I forgave Daniel. The answer is more complicated. I love my son. I am watching him. I am letting his actions speak where his words failed. Maybe one day forgiveness will arrive as something quiet and real. Maybe not.
But I no longer confuse forgiveness with giving someone the same weapon twice. What I know is this. For 3 years, they thought the garage made me disappear. They thought a cot, a space heater, and a few polite lies could turn a father into a burden, a homeowner into a guest, a man into an issue to be removed. They were wrong. I was still there. My name was still there. My memory was still there. And when the adults forgot how to tell the truth, a child whispered it at Thanksgiving dinner. That whisper did not destroy our family. It showed us where the destruction had already begun. And it brought me back, not just into my house, but into my own life.